was thinking, so you start out as a child, and if you're lucky, you're going to have learned the language in a fun way. There's games to be played, and somehow you retain it. And then the moment, I think that the transition is the moment you start reading and writing, you're then all of a sudden required to learn a foreign language in a boring way. And hardly anyone will retain what they've learned and use it. So now as an adult, I've been learning Mandarin Chinese for about 2.5 months, and I stopped myself to think, what is it that I'm actually enjoying it? I mean, it's a completely different language, and yet I find it fun. So if you're interested in anything language related, if you're a language addict like myself, stay tuned by subscribing to the channel and hit the bell to get notified every time I post a new video on Fridays. In case you're wondering, my mother tongue is Portuguese, and since learning Portuguese, of course, I've learned English, French, Italian, Polish, Dutch, I'm thinking chronologically, Spanish, Swedish, German, Frisian. That's the language from the north region, the north of the Netherlands. And now I'm learning Mandarin Chinese. And I've learned these languages through, being a child at school, child in language courses, all sorts of scenarios, abroad, in the country, moving to the country, and in the process of doing that, I've learned ways to make the whole process more fun and more effective. The first thing I started doing, and it was completely unplanned, was teaching my 4-year-old daughter. So actually teaching someone else is amazing to retain. Actually, you're repeating what you've learned yourself. And by explaining to someone, it may start making more sense, it sinks in. Plus the other person will repeat, hopefully, and even better opportunity. So this happened mainly with the numbers so far, so 1 to 10, so she's herself practicing saying numbers 1 to 10 or 20 in other languages. But then she hears me practicing, and then she's interested, comes to me, and then I tell her. So now every time she's counting, then I suggest, I don't force it, I don't like forcing the language she wants to speak, but I suggest, okay, let's now do this in Mandarin, and then she's really excited about it. Another element that was very unexpected, and still related to this, was that one thing that I came up with was watching another YouTube video, because I thought, okay, maybe it's good to have different sources of I was going to say income, but language input, let's say. So I found the video, of course very simple, it's easy to find online, and the person is saying the numbers, I'm listening to them out loud, and my daughter is playing by her kitchen, and she starts repeating them, completely lost in her play, and she starts saying the numbers out loud, and it made me cry. And yeah. Still tricky to say the numbers because it's so different, but yeah. Another thing I did related to this was finding, by chance, this YouTube channel that I follow about China, so it's about the culture, and they were showing how a Chinese wedding is, and then in the middle of it, people started counting to 10. Like, wait a minute, slow down. I want to see what the music behind is, and so I've been watching that part of the video quite a bit. I wonder if the person is looking at metrics and why is this a peak in views in this part of the video. But anyway, it's helping me. One thing people always complain about when they're learning a new language is saying how fast native speakers speak. Usually Italians or Spanish, but I mean, I guess could apply to anyone. And yeah, so this happens, but then your teacher will speak very slowly in the beginning for you to understand. If you're talking to someone, they will also speak slow, so you never get a sense of how is it in real life, the language in the real. So another technique I use to make it more fun, actually laugh at myself, is called what I like to call speed repetition. So I learned a sentence, of course, at the moment they're still very short sentences, and then I try to say them as quick as possible. I just need to make sure that I know what I'm saying before, and then to make them sound, it's sort of like to train my tongue, my mouth, to these foreign sounds, to make them as native as possible. So let me give a demonstration. What was it again? 这是什么? 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 I don't know if that sounds native at all, but it means what is that? No, what is this in Chinese? One more interesting thing I've been doing is replying to whoever's around me, usually at home, in the language I'm learning, so in Chinese. So let's say, you could do this with, kids, with a partner, with a housemate, with your mother, I don't know. With your dog, actually could work with a dog, but I don't have one. Anyway, so you could go and reply to the person. The person asks you a question, you reply in Chinese. And they go, what? I mean, if they know what you're doing, then they might, okay, there she goes again. But, for example, my youngest daughter is now, being cheeky and trying out, exploring the world, let's say, and I will say no most of the time. And she's learned the word in Portuguese, so that's enough. And I thought, I need to learn Chinese, so I'll reply to her in Chinese when I want to say no. So I'll just go boo 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 boo, and she understands. I don't need to translate. She gets the point. So that's really funny. Okay, I'm curious. Am I the only person sort of crazy who does this sort of thing and stops to evaluate what is it that makes learning Chinese fun? Let me know if I'm not alone, or in the comments, and if you have other tips to share. I would love to perhaps give them a try. Okay, tip number 4 that I would like to share is something I don't do specifically just for Chinese, but of course this is what the language I'm learning at the moment, and it's something I love to do secretly, but I'm exposing it now. So when I hear Chinese person speaking a language I know, so that would be now Portuguese, because I'm learning Chinese in Brazilian Portuguese, or it would be English. And I notice when they speak Portuguese or English, the mistakes they make, or something specific that they will always say. Not necessarily a mistake, but something they will say that draws my attention. And for me, this is a really fun exercise. So, for example, in Portuguese, I noticed that the teacher that my teacher, she will mix up all the genders. So Portuguese has 2 genders, male and female, and she messes them up. So that is a clear indication that probably there is no gender in Chinese. Indeed, there isn't. Another thing so specifically with English, what I notice is, so here not a mistake, it's just the intonation. The intonation is very different than from a native English speaker, and that I listen to it and I sort of tune out what they're saying, and I'm just focusing on the musicality of their conversation, their speech. I love doing that. I also talk to myself a lot, or I sort of forget, but when I think about it, when I just studied a bit of grammar or vocabulary, I learned something new, I try to talk to myself, not out loud, but in my head, repeating what I've learned. And this is, it's fun because, not saying I aim to dream in Chinese by any means, but just repeating these things in my head makes it more, it sort of relates to what I said before, so teaching someone else. So if replying to someone else in the language, I may actually do it, but then in silence. So I do it to myself before I reply to the person. So I was like, oh, how do I know this is very simple. I know how to say it in Chinese already, so let me do it, and then I'll reply to whatever language I'm speaking to, the person I'm with. I really enjoy doing this. The final tip I would like to share is sort of searching for the differences or similarities between Mandarin and all the languages I know. So in the beginning, it always feels like you're lost in the sea of grammar and grammatical structure and vocabulary that sounds that make no sense to you at all. So whenever, okay, you're fed, I'm still in this process of being fed, let's say, information about the language. So, okay, this is how sentence order works in Chinese. Fine, I process that, but either it's exactly the same as, let's say, Portuguese, and I heard it, it goes this way and goes that way, as in I don't have to memorize it. But then something changes, and when you want to ask a question, the word order actually stays the same. So what I do then, okay, this sounds like Dutch, so I put it in this category. Okay, this is same as Dutch, or perhaps it's the opposite as another language I know, and then I make that connection. So I'm sort of like, my brain is making this mind map to make sense of the chaos that a language sounds like and seems like in the beginning. And this for me sort of motivates me to move forward, and it's fun. I enjoy it. Okay, these were my 6 tips in making learning Mandarin Chinese more fun this year. I don't know if you heard, but the Language Unschool is going to open very, very soon. So if you want to hear firsthand when that's going to happen, check out the link below. And then there will be more videos also to explain exactly what I mean by Language Unschool, what is it to be a language unschooler, and anything language related. So stay tuned, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell so you get notified whenever I post a new video every Friday. Okay, and don't forget, listen to yourself, don't listen to me. Bye. 再见。